Let's talk about property ownership now, specifically real property versus personal property. Real property is the land plus the appurtenances on the land. Now, appurtenant, as you recall, means belongs or goes with. Think of the word appurtenant as a perk. And that's easy to remember because perk and appurtenant kind of sound the same. Appurtenances are things that transfer with the land when the land is transferred to another owner. This includes the permanent natural objects such as the trees and the water, and it also includes anything attached to the land. If the owner intends to have that attached permanently, then that will be transferred with the land too, and it's an appurtenance. The rights of ownership are also appurtenances. Rights of ownership include surface rights, subsurface rights, and air rights, which is the air above the surface, rights to the air. Now, personal property is everything that's not real property. Items of personal property, we also call them chattels. Now, real property, getting back to real property, the characteristics of real property are important. Real property has economic characteristics such as scarcity, improvements, permanence of investment, and location. Remember the SIPL, S-I-P-L? That's the economic characteristics of real property. Scarcity is the supply of land. It just simply means, scarcity simply means the supply of land is not limitless. Improvements is anything man-made that's built on the land that affects the land's value. Permanence of investment, basically, you have to understand that the return on investment needs to be long and stable in comparison to other types of investment. So that's what puts land or real property in another category from other types of investments is the return on investment for land is long and stable. That's called permanence of investment. And of course, as you know, location is the most important economic characteristic of land. So sometimes we call location area preference. So you'll see it written both ways. So scarcity, improvements, permanence of investment, and location. Those are the economic characteristics of real property. Now let's talk about the physical characteristics. Physical characteristics, as you recall, are immobility, indestructibility, and uniqueness. Immobility means the land is fixed. You can't move it. So anything that is real property is also fixed. Indestructibility, the permanence of land, tends to make investments in real property relatively stable because it's indestructible. Compared to other investments, land is indestructible. However, improvements on land can depreciate and reduce the land's value. Just because it's called an improvement does not mean it's necessarily an improvement. Sometimes they can depreciate. If it's man-made, it's an improvement on real estate. Uniqueness. Well, no two parcels of real estate are alike. Each parcel is geographically distinct. Even if we have a building that has multiple levels and we have two parcels, each with a different elevation, both parcels have the same footprint and they're in the same place geographically, but their elevation is different. So every parcel of real estate is unique. Ownership of real estate includes certain rights that pertain to the surface of the land, the subsurface below the surface, and the air above the surface. Mineral rights: an owner of real estate is entitled to use the natural resources below the Earth's surface, provided they're not held by another party or the government. Air rights: an owner of real estate may use the air above the land, provided the rights have not been eliminated by law. Mineral and air rights are independent of the surface rights of land ownership. An owner may transfer those rights to another party while still retaining surface rights to the land itself. Water rights: owners of land adjacent to rivers, lakes, or oceans have special common law rights. Riparian rights are granted to owners of land along the course of a stream, river, or similar body of water. It's easy to remember riparian rights because riparian starts with R and river starts with R, so it's easy to remember. An owner has unrestricted rights to use the water with riparian rights, provided the owner does not impede the flow of the water. Littoral rights are granted to owners of lands that border a standing body of water like a lake, or seas, or oceans. These owners have the right to use the available waters, but not at the expense or detriment of the other littoral owners. Water rights are appurtenant to the land and are not retained when the land is sold. A former owner does not enjoy those rights once the owner sells the land. The doctrine of prior appropriation. Certain states rely on this doctrine, which states that the first user diverting water for beneficial use, like irrigation, has the first claim on the water. Personal property, also referred to as chattel, must be included in the sales contract if the buyer wishes to receive it. Personal property is all property that does not fit the definition of real property. Personal property is movable and includes such things as chairs, tables, clothing, money, bank accounts, and automobiles. Any manufactured housing that is not permanently affixed to the land is also considered personal property. Now, that's very important. Manufactured housing not permanently affixed to the land is sold and taxed as personal property. An emblement is an annually growing crop, such as corn or grapes, that is produced and picked at harvest. Emblements are fruits of one's labors. Emblements. Though they are attached to the land before the harvest, emblements are regarded as personal property. Just the fruit is the personal property. The tree itself is real property. In the case of a tenant growing the crop on leased land, the tenant has the right to take the harvest resulting from the tenant's labor even after the lease is terminated, because it's the fruits of the tenant's labor. The crop's harvests are the tenant's personal property. A landlord cannot terminate a lease without giving the tenant the right to enter the land and harvest any crops belonging to the tenants, fruits of the tenant's labors. Now, personal property can become real property if the personal property becomes a fixture. In other words, if it's affixed to the land, it will become real property. Fixtures and trade fixtures. A fixture is personal property that has been affixed or attached to the land to an improvement so that it becomes a part of the real property, as we've discussed, including such items as heating systems, kitchen cabinets, light fixtures, and plumbing, and transfers with the real property unless the contract specifically excludes them. Anything affixed transfers with the real property. Intent is the determining factor in what constitutes a fixture. Intent depends upon three factors: the method of annexation, how permanent is it? Adaptation, is it adapted to the real estate? Is the item used as real property or personal property? An example would be garage door openers and keys to the doors in the home. They would transfer with the real property and would be a part of the real property. And then, most importantly, would be the agreement. Have the parties agreed to whether a particular item is real or personal property? A trade fixture is an article belonging to a commercial tenant, and it's attached to a rented space or building and used in conducting the business of the tenant. In other words, the tenant makes money using this item, such as moving clothing racks in a dry cleaning business or restaurant equipment in a restaurant. A tenant is responsible for removing the trade fixtures before the last day of the rental period, or the fixtures may become the real property of the landowner. Let's talk about attachment. Attachment, when an item of personal property becomes attached or affixed to real property, that's called attachment. Construction materials used to build a house or other structure become part of the real estate through attachment. Construction materials used to build a house or other structure become part of the real estate through attachment. Severance, that's another vocabulary word. This is removing something attached to the land or an improvement resulting in the object becoming personal property, such as cutting down a tree. The cut tree would be severed from the property. Bill of sale. An item of personal property is transferred through a bill of sale, not through a deed. Real estate is transferred through a deed. Personal property is transferred through a bill of sale.